Lascan Corla, in the darkest days of our country's history, faced with famine, violence and the loss of our independence and freedom, we clung to a single hope. We endured, fought, dreamed and died for the promise of a better future, a better life for our children and for ourselves. In the same period, we in our millions fled to other parts of the world. Some were lucky and were able to breathe free and create new lives for themselves. Others were discriminated against, despised, abused and rejected. As a country and as a people, we know what it's like to be displaced and also to displace others. We know what it's like to be vulnerable, and we know what it's like to feel lost and adrift. Today, a lot of people in our country are feeling afraid. Some afraid of being displaced, who feel they are losing out, and even that their identity is under threat. Others, new to our shores, are also afraid. They're mourning all that they've lost and are fearful about what is still to come, that they are not welcome, or that if they are welcome, that the welcome might end. Starting with us, the politicians, and spreading out to every community, I believe we all need to do better. We need to respond better to the multitude of fears out there, the different concerns, and the competing ideas of what our country should be and can be. It's very easy to offer a céad míle fáilte when things are going well, or when the visitors are paying their own way. It's much more difficult when it impacts on our own lives in a direct and meaningful way. In our hearts, we are welcoming people, but hearts can be hardened by the cold reality of the cost of those 1,000 welcomes. Resources will always be limited. Sometimes it's money, other times it's manpower, sometimes it's material and space. But instead of pointing the finger or apportioning blame, we need to provide solutions, honesty and reassurance. As Taoiseach, I believe we should welcome and protect those who've come to these shores legitimately, because that is our way of honouring our own national story, our way of paying tribute to the many thousands here and abroad who never found a better life, the many who were silenced forever because of the oppression imposed on them by a few. Lascan Corla, I firmly believe that migration is a good thing for our country, but it must be properly managed as best we can. The public expect this and are right to do so. We have a moral and legal responsibility to those fleeing war and persecution, and that means being fair and open with everyone who needs our protection. It also means having legal pathways to facilitate economic migration, because we need that too. And it means being firm with those who come here with a false story or under false pretences. Criminal gangs should never decide who enters our country. That's for us to decide, not human traffickers. Therefore, we need to make sure that our system is efficient and fairly operated, that decisions are made quickly so that those entitled to international protection get status and can rebuild their lives here. The money and staff allocated in Budget 2023, approximately €18 million, will help make this a reality. There has been a major increase in international protection applications throughout the European Union. At last week's Special European Council in Brussels, we agreed to step up action to strengthen the European Union's external borders and prevent people smuggling and especially loss of life, and also to step up returns to countries of origin when applications for protection are refused. Countries should be willing to take their own citizens back, as we do. Lascan Corla, across the country, communities have warmly welcomed people fleeing from war and persecution with a generous spirit. We're showing empathy and compassion as a people in standing up for what is right. In doing so, we know that capacity is not unlimited, but with time, capacity can be expanded. We're demonstrating that through our actions and through our history, that our experiences have shaped us as a nation and moulded our values. In the years since Russia's brutal invasion, Ukraine has seen immense suffering and destruction and a wide-scale displacement of its people. Last week I joined other EU heads of government to reaffirm our steadfast support for Ukraine for as long as it takes. As part of the EU's response, the temporary protection system was triggered for the very first time on the 4th of March 2022. This has provided quick and effective assistance to those fleeing the war. Already over 73,000 people have arrived into Ireland as beneficiaries of temporary protection from Ukraine. Our response as a state has been unprecedented in our history. Faced with a massive humanitarian crisis, we've accommodated 57,000 people in almost 700 locations, enrolled almost 15,000 Ukrainian pupils in our schools, issued 55,000 medical cards, and more than 13,000 beneficiaries of temporary protection have found employment here and are helping our economy to grow and prosper. We've done more than any other country in Western Europe to accommodate Ukrainian refugees, and we're proud to have done so. We will turn nobody away. We're doing everything we can to coordinate our humanitarian efforts. Every month, I chair meetings of the Cabinet Committee on the Humanitarian Response to Ukraine to oversee this work. Community fora set up by local authorities are working effectively across the country, managing the response at local level. We're also developing a more agile response to provide accommodation beyond the use of hotels and tourist accommodation. We're accelerating the refurbishment of buildings, continuing the Unoccupied Homes campaign, providing pledged accommodation, and also rapid build homes on suitable sites. This crisis began as a humanitarian emergency, and it remains such, but we're now developing a more long-term and sustainable response, recognising this war may go on for a very long time. We want services and assistance to be consistent and equitable, in line with our international obligations. As Taoiseach, I particularly want to pay tribute to all of those who've opened their communities and their own homes to people arriving from abroad. It has been a great national effort at a time when things are not easy for everyone, particularly with the cost of living rising. I think when we look back at this time, our response will look better than it does today. Decency and humanity is prevailing over anger and fear, at least in the main. Last Cancórla, increasing numbers of people are applying for international protection from outside of Europe, over 15,000 since the start of 2022. We all know that the war in Ukraine and the significant numbers of people seeking international protection is making the pressure on accommodation even more intense. Today, almost 78,000 people, men, women and children, are living in state-sourced accommodation. That's more than 10 times the number 2 years ago. It's equivalent to the population of Galway City. Unfortunately, in recent weeks, the government has been unable to accommodate all newly arrived international protection applicants. Families with children are prioritised, as are vulnerable individuals, but some people have been left without shelter. So we must find additional supply to rectify this. This work is ongoing, it's intense, it's cross-government, and indeed we'll have meetings at ministerial level on it today. The international crisis started suddenly, and the speed of events has meant that we haven't always been able to prepare the groundwork, to talk to communities, to allay the concerns that they might have. But we do need to get this right. Some communities have genuine concerns about pressures on facilities and services, and they should not be dismissed. And we need to reassure them that we are going to invest in community infrastructure and facilities to recognise the contribution made by communities across the country. To this end, we now have a €50 million community recognition fund for facilities and services that will be used for the good of everyone in the community, and a further €10 million is being made available for integration. Unfortunately, in recent weeks, we've seen very aggressive campaigns directed against newcomers designed to create divisions in our society. Unscrupulous individuals and groups are preying on legitimate concerns and weaponising them to inspire fear and hatred, while others see it as a political opportunity to promote their party or even their ideology. This should not be. We should all stand together against fear and hate and conspiracy theories. We should do so on a non-partisan and non-ideological basis, a nation standing together against racism. We have a long transition of aiding other nations in times of trouble, and that will continue no matter what. It will be hard, and we will face many difficulties, but as a country and as a people, we will do what is right and just and fair. We will be true to our history because we share this world too. Your Maigeth.